What kind of nightmares await when your casual camping trip with three strangers spirals into chaos? 5 months. 5 long, agonizing months since Brian had last gone camping. He had moved from Oregon to work as a bartender at one of the busiest bars in North Texas. When the city lights dimmed and all customers were attended to, his mind wandered to places far beyond the clinking of glasses and the murmur of bar talk. He longed to be in the vast, quiet woods, surrounded only by the rustling of leaves, the crackling of the fire, and the distant call of wildlife. The city life, with its cacophony of noise and the constant hum of human activity, had always suffocated him. He craved the silence, the raw, untamed beauty of the wilderness. Since moving, Brian hadn't been able to find anyone to share his passion for camping. Most of his friends back in Oregon had long since parted ways, and his co-workers and the few acquaintances he had made in North Texas weren't interested. After an overwhelmingly busy shift, Brian decided to take the weekend off, letting go of the considerable tips he would have earned, and find a camping spot. Determined to find some good suggestions, he logged on to Reddit. Brian stumbled upon a subreddit titled Lake Texoma Camping. It was peculiar. Despite having numerous members, there were pictures uploaded by only 3 active users: Penny, Harold, and Kathy. There were good photos of the lake, canopy of trees, sunsets, and glimpses of their camping setups. Nothing out of the ordinary, yet somehow Brian found himself captivated. He had to go. He composed a post, his thumbs flying across the phone's keyboard. "Hey everyone. New to the area and dying to get back into camping. Planning to go to Lake Texoma this weekend. Can you tell me what are some good spots within the area? If there are any groups going, can I join?" The responses were immediate from the only active members of the forum. Penny's comment was, "Hey there. We're heading out this weekend. Would love to have you join us." Harold quickly added, "We have an extra tent as well." Kathy joined the chat. "Sounds fun. Welcome to the group, Brian." Excitement bubbled within him. He had found his tribe. They agreed on all details on who would get tents, water cans, a guitar, some booze, and food. Brian was tasked with carrying food for the trip. His heart raced in anticipation as he confirmed the timing with them. After briefly checking their profiles and sending follow requests on Instagram, Brian noticed something peculiar. Each of them included a link to a particular subreddit in their bio. It struck him as strange. Why would they be promoting this on their Instagram pages? The weekend arrived and Brian met them at 4 in the afternoon, just as the sun was ready to dip toward the horizon. He found Penny, Harold, and Kathy waiting for him. They had traveled by bus and hitchhiked with an older gentleman to reach this remote spot. The area around the lake was engulfed by a dense forest of towering oaks and American elms. The group walked deeper into the woods, nearly half a mile from where Brian had parked his car. They set up camp in a secluded spot, sheltered by the canopy of trees. As night fell, they gathered wood for a bonfire and shared food and drinks, the warm firelight flickering in the growing darkness. Stories of past camping trips flowed freely, accompanied by the sound of guitars and light-hearted laughter. As darkness enveloped them, an unsettling silence fell upon the forest. A chill crept into the air, settling in their bones. The usual sounds of nocturnal creatures were conspicuously absent. Kathy, a novice camper, grew uneasy. She couldn't stand the silence. "This place at night gives me the creeps," she muttered. Just as Harold suggested they retire for the night, a chilling scream echoed through the trees that sent shivers down their spines. Kathy gasped, her eyes wide with terror. Brian felt a knot of unease tighten in his stomach. Another scream, then another, closer this time, unmistakably female, both of them. They looked at each other in shock. "Someone needs help," Brian said. Kathy trembled. "We shouldn't go out there. It's not safe." Penny, however, insisted. "We can't leave someone in need." They hurriedly picked up a flashlight from their camp and began to venture deeper into the forest. Kathy walked close behind, visibly shaken, while Harold led the way. The screams continued, louder with each step they took toward the direction of the sound. The trees became even more tangled, the land uneven and treacherous. Finally, through the thick mist of trees, they saw an extinguished campfire. But something was wrong. The site looked abandoned from a distance, 4 tents with no one around. As they started moving forward to take a closer look, Harold's flashlight flickered and died. He turned to Penny, who brought a flashlight but had left it inside the tent. Brian noticed the look of fear in both Kathy and Penny's eyes. He asked them to remain exactly where they were with Harold and went to retrieve the flashlight from the tent. With strange howls still echoing through the trees, he held his nerves and briskly walked to their campsite. The air felt colder now, the night pressing in on him. He picked the torch and tried retracing his path back to that abandoned campsite. Will they be safe? He tried to ignore the sinking feeling in his gut. The screams were faintly audible and grew stronger as he was nearing his destination. When he returned to the abandoned campsite, he froze. Penny, Harold, and Kathy were gone. The place looked like it had been hastily left behind. Everything was scattered around. He noticed something unusual. The marooned items were almost identical to those at their campsite. The same model of guitar, the same brand of cigarettes, and the same bottle of liquor. Brian called their names. No answer. Suddenly, something happened. He heard cries for help coming from his own campsite. The same faint echoes they had heard the first time. In panic, Brian turned and fled, running as fast as he could, his breath coming in sharp gasps. Every step felt as though the forest was closing in around him, the howls growing louder, more desperate. He didn't stop until he reached his car, parked on the edge of the road. He had abandoned Penny, Harold, and Kathy. Quivering, he climbed into his car, fumbled with the keys, and turned on the engine. Almost when he was ready to drive away, he saw 3 figures running towards him through the forest. It was them, his 3 fellow trekkers, their faces pale and streaked with fear. He unlocked the doors. Breathless and wide-eyed, they scrambled into his car as Brian slammed on the gas pedal. Penny quickly explained they had seen a shadowy figure following them, something unnatural, forcing them to run in terror through the woods. They had left their phones, their belongings, anything that might slow them down. Brian didn't ask any questions. He kept speeding, desperate to leave the forest behind. As they drove, his eyes caught a fleeting shadow among the trees, chasing 3 figures who were running desperately. The trees made it hard to see clearly, but he was certain their outfits were like those of the 3 people sitting beside him in the car. Brian's grip tightened on the steering wheel as fear coursed through him. "Guys," he stammered, turning to share what he had seen. There was no one in the car. Panic-stricken, he quickly turned back to face the road again. Penny, Harold, and Kathy stood ominously in front of his vehicle, their clothes soaked in blood and their faces grotesquely transformed. A horrified scream escaped Brian's lips as he shifted into reverse. His heart leaped into his throat. He kept glancing back as he drove backward. But Brian lost control of the car and crashed violently into a tree. In the haze of his fading vision, the last thing he saw were 3 figures extending their arms with malevolent smiles stretched across their faces. A few months later, a young woman named Alex found the same subreddit. She posted about wanting to know more about the camping experience at Lake Texoma, asking if anyone would be willing to join her for a trip in the coming weeks. Almost immediately, 3 replies appeared: Penny, Harold, and Kathy. But this time there was a 4th comment from someone named Brian. For more such horror stories, subscribe to Sinister Tales.